just for now. Let's move this over here.
This video will attempt to explain the current story of Little Nightmares. We'll be talking about the games Little Nightmares 1 through 3, as well as the mobile title Very Little Nightmares. We'll also spending some time talking about the audio fiction series Sound of Nightmares, as well as the various comics and novels released for the franchise. We have a lot to go over today, so let's not waste any time. Like the video if you enjoy and subscribe if you're new. Feel free to check out my other story videos here on the channel, whether that be the straight to the point story and timeline videos like this one, or analyses and retrospectives that offer more opinion-based content. If you'd like to support me further, you can also donate to the channel's Patreon linked in the description. And so without further ado,
plug that shit.
Let's get started. So Little Nightmares takes place in the nowhere. There is a map in the third game that gives us a good look at the land's size. There is a distinct lack of markings or visual assistance, so we can't pinpoint where each game or chapter takes place, but at least we have a reference point. The Land of Nowhere seems to be a separate reality. As detailed in various other media across the series, there exists a real world, nowhere, and then the threshold serving as a bridge between the two. Little is known about life outside nowhere. All we know of is a city known as the Counties. The Counties has been described as a rather depressing place, and this is made all the worse due to some recent kidnappings. Milk cartons have attached to them images of kids who have gone missing. A major suspect in this investigation is the Copy, better known as the Counties Psychiatric Institute. It's been reported that numerous kids have gone in there for psychiatric help only to disappear from within its walls. No one is sure why this is happening, nor is anyone even looking into the matter. The disappearances seem to stem from nowhere. A girl at the institution, Noon, was having frequent nightmares and was admitted here in hopes of finding a cure. These nightmares seem to be an early onset of symptoms. More and more she would suffer from these nightmares, having them daily. A counselor at the institute had briefly noticed her disappear, only to reappear in her bed right where she was just seconds later. But seconds then turned to minutes, and minutes turned to hours, as she would eventually disappear at night only to come back by the morning. It seems as though nowhere was calling to her, with the man on the other line being the ferryman. The ferryman is said to take kids from the real world through the threshold and into nowhere. Kids seem to be the only ones able to cross, as that aforementioned counselor would try to cross himself but was denied entry. Although the ferryman did imply that there was another way into nowhere, although no concrete answer was given. Even then, it seems like only specific kids are eligible for entry. In an interview with the channel MinMax, writer David Mervick says that children come here for a reason, and that something happened in their past life that made them a good fit for nowhere, although we can only speculate on the criteria. The reason kids are chosen is likely because of something within them. Noon, after being taken, says that she could feel them looking at her, and they like what they see. So there is something about children, maybe some kind of essence or power that is valuable to this land, and thus why they are taken en masse. It also seems as though that time works differently within this place. The Lonely Ones novel alludes to the fact that each of the three main characters is not from the same time period, so Nowhere may be able to snatch up kids from all different eras and time periods. Once you're in Nowhere, it seems like you're basically stuck here. Only one character that we know of is presumed to have escaped, with all the others either dying or remaining inside, with no indication that they have escaped. They also seem to lose their memories as time goes on. Multiple kids report their memories starting to fail, even before entering, with some losing nearly all of it by the time they arrive. Looking into the geography of Nowhere, we can see that the realm is rather disjointed. Noon describes it like the floors of the Institute. Each floor is a part of the same building, but each one does something different. There are many locations within Nowhere, such as the Maw, the Pale City, Carnival, Necropolis, Candy Factory, and Institute. While some of these places seem connected, they mostly operate independently from one another. The Maw is a massive ship that resurfaces every so often to provide a buffet for the guests. The Carnival provides entertainment, and the Pale City is just a regular city. Each place is ruled over by an entity, though. The Lady runs things within the Maw, while the Thin Man is accompanied by the Signal Tower, both of whom watch over the Pale City. And as we'll soon see, once we start digging into the games, the kids aren't the only ones that seem to be persecuted here. The one constant throughout these areas is the growing number of adults. Each one seems hostile to the kids, as they will capture them when in sight. There is evidence to suggest, though, that these adults, known as residents, are actually just kids who were taken here and have grown up. The official Little Nightmares Twitter account tweeted one day, quote, "Your inner child is the only thing standing between you and life as a resident." This implies that Nowhere corrupts those who stay long enough to make them mindless adults, which is what we see in-game. Now, it's possible that this is just one of the many origins of these adults. It's just as possible that some adults have arrived through some unknown means. But as we'll soon see, these adults are worked to the bone by the leaders of each area, and are often killed and repurposed for the next round of adults, as seen in places like the Maw. Despite the common enemy, they still take the time to capture any kids they see. Those caught by the residents are usually killed thereafter. Some have been eaten and used as flavor for food, and others are just tormented, like being used as a washcloth or made to dance and perform. But sometimes a different fate is in store for them. Glitched remains can be found in the Pale City, likely a remnant of the Thin Man and the Signal Tower. Shadow children are sometimes spotted in the Institute and the Maw, which are likely their own form of remnant, but sometimes they could turn into other creatures called gnomes. We only see the gnome-making process in Little Nightmares 1, where the lady turns the protagonist into one. But gnomes can be spotted across the games, so it may not be specific to the lady and her powers. According to the official Twitter account, quote, "Gnomes are remnants, echoes of what was and nothing more. If there was not even a remnant left behind, there would be no gnome." This means that the gnomes are the only remnant of these kids that is left behind. So it's assumed that once the essence or power of the child is taken, all that is left is a gnome. In the same DLC, the runaway kid helps a few gnomes start a fire, and despite being of different build than a gnome, their shadows are the same, further proving that they were once kids. This would explain why they all look the same. Any sense of identity or individuality is gone, and now they look no different than any other gnome. What happens after a kid becomes a gnome is not clear, although they do seem sought after as the gnomes continue to hide from others, including other kids and various residents, suggesting that their usefulness has not run out yet. So we have a world that uses entities to kidnap kids, while exploiting adults to keep things running. That begs the question, is there a higher being, a grand purpose to this all? At the moment, no. When asked about some of these details, one of the directors stated that things don't work like you'd expect in Little Nightmares. These villains don't have tragic backstories or grand motivations, but places and characters do exist for specific reasons. The Maw and Pale City exist for specific reasons, but their existence is tied to the residents. While the resident villains do what they do because of instinct. To quote Mervick again, quote, "All of the residents of Little Nightmares, they don't really have motivations. It's just the base instinct of people, so we take this base instinct and pull it in different directions. So the hunter is just bloodthirsty. He has the blood sport impulse, I guess. Just reduce people and animals to nothing or trophies on the wall. Just pure naked aggression. They don't have a goal in life that they want to achieve, it's just this urge." And then when asked if there is a higher being presiding over the land, he didn't comment. That said, there is a notable amount of eyes throughout the games. Eyes can be found on doors, machines, walls, and even as traps. It may imply that the people of Nowhere are being watched over by some entity, but the true meaning behind the motif is still a mystery. As you can see, Nowhere operates in a rather strange way, but we are little by little uncovering the mystery. The games and now all this external media are giving us more pieces to the puzzle, so it's only a matter of time until a clear picture starts to form. With that in mind, I'd like to now talk about these puzzle pieces, that being the games and the other media that make up this franchise, so we can have a better understanding as to how all of this fits. The first game I'd like to talk about is the mobile title Very Little Nightmares. It starts with a young girl in a raincoat. She's being chased by something, forcing her to barricade herself in a shed, only to wake up soon after realizing it was just a dream. She initially wakes up in a hot air balloon. The contents around the area seem to imply that it was being built here. The place she finds herself in is called the Nest, a large mansion built atop a stone foundation that is somehow able to hold itself up. This hot air balloon is likely a means of entering and leaving the establishment, although how this girl got here is unclear. The mansion itself seems to have quite a few odd rooms. On the first level are dozens of cages. This seems to suggest that the mansion is kidnapping children. The presence of gnomes and the eyes all but confirm that this is the case. As for the girl in the raincoat, she has no other objective in mind other than to escape with her life. She will, however, run into various residents within the mansion, mainly the craftsman and the butler. These two seem to work in tandem to please the main antagonist of the Nest, a little girl known as the Pretender. The Pretender seems to be a small, rich child. There is a picture of her in the manor, alongside what I assume to be her parents. The aforementioned villains seem to be her caretakers, as one room within the craftsman's domain contains wigs, small dolls, and other tools. This would connect to the dozens of dolls we see throughout the levels, as they are likely the Pretender's dolls, and the craftsman is making them for her. Although we aren't sure where he gets his supplies, but the dozens of cages that used to contain kids could point to our answer. The butler, on the other hand, can be seen ironing clothes. Owing to his name, he seems to serve the family as an assistant, although given the girl's family is not found in-game, his duties likely just involve her these days. He does have a strong sense of loyalty to the family though. The butler is bent over like this so that his head is always bowing towards her. Although the presence of the lock behind his back keeping his hands shut may suggest that it's not a willing action. The numerous dolls and lack of parents may imply that the girl is lonely, and so uses the dolls as a way to cope. As mentioned before, there are dozens of them, all in different rooms doing different activities. It's very likely a way for her to pretend that she has lots of friends, although that of course begs the question as to why she does not. In a later level, we can see various paintings of other children, which could be her friends. Maybe these kids turn into the gnomes we find throughout the mansion. Maybe they were lured here under the guise of a play date with the pretender. Maybe she is as much a victim of this world as the others. All of this ends with a final confrontation against the pretender. Despite her desperate climb down the nest, she is unable to outrun her. Although another girl, who you have spotted a few times during the game, comes to help. They work together to escape the gaze of the butler, and now she's here helping the girl once more. This time, she will wait until the pretender is underneath her to strike her head with a boulder. It didn't seem to do the job though, as she leaps towards our protagonist, sending them both into the water, never to be seen again, while the other girl safely makes her way down to the bottom. This then brings us to the events of Little Nightmares 2. We start the game as our new protagonist, Mono. Some of Mono's origins are detailed in the new comic Descent into Nowhere that we will cover in more depth later in this video. But for the broad strokes, Mono is a milk carton kid, a concept seen back in the 80s in our own world where missing children were placed on milk cartons to help raise awareness. Mono, along with a few other kids, seem to have gone missing within the counties, a large city full of darkness and depravity. At some point, Mono would end up in nowhere. As outlined in the Little Nightmares digital comics, Mono was with quite a few kids before each of them was abducted by a large but skinny man. It's possible that this being is the Thin Man, a being who will make more noteworthy appearances in this second game, although little evidence does actually prove this theory. Regardless, we start the game within a forest. This forest domain belongs to the hunter. Strewn across this forest are traps and victims within said traps. He seems to take great pleasure in hunting other people, be they animals or children. Within the forest are also the presence of glitched remains. These can be found throughout the game and are implied to be the souls of the kids who were killed and or taken. Their glitchy status is a rather inspired choice, as there are clearly other methods of showcasing the remnants of one's soul, such as in the gnomes. So this is likely a phenomenon specific to this part of Nowhere. Some of these remains also seem to belong to the kids featured in the digital comics. One was attacked by the Thin Man who appeared out of a TV near the hunter's outhouse. Another was taken by the teacher while hiding in a locker, and another was recaptured by the doctor while trying to escape. I can't say for certain that it's them, but some of the kids' remains are right where they left them, giving us a glimpse into their fates. As Mono heads further into the forest, he comes across the hunter's home. Within the house are adult-like puppets who sit motionless at the dinner table. Coupled with some scenes of the hunter and the rest of the props in the house, this implies that the hunter partakes in the art of taxidermy. That doesn't explain, however, who these beings are and who they are meant to represent. Given the presence of the Pale City nearby and its role in this area of Nowhere, it's possible that this hunter had lost their family to the signal tower and had tried to recreate them, although he may have just captured people fleeing the city. Exploring the rest of the house, Mono comes across a young girl holding a music box. This girl was seen in the first issue of those digital comics. Having climbed out of the tunnel, she stared at the moon only to find Mono sitting in a tree. This distraction enabled the hunter to get the drop on her, which explains how she ended up here, and the tally marks on the wall suggest that she's been here for a while. The two work together to escape the hunter. They first find him stuffing another one of his kills. As they attempt to push through a small gate, the noise alerts the hunter, who chases them throughout the forest. While the hunter can be seen wearing a mask with only one eye hole, implying that he may have lost sight in the other or the whole eye entirely, he's a crack shot, and never misses a target that's in the open. Staying out of the light, the duo makes it to a small shed. Barricading the door gives them just enough time to use their own shotgun and give the hunter a taste of his own medicine, which kills him on the spot. They then use a broken door as a raft which takes them across the water and towards the Pale City. Their first introduction to the city is a grim one, a pair of left-behind clothes meant to mimic a hanging, caught inside a TV. Strolling across the city, we can see that it's both incredibly empty and yet houses a plethora of TVs. This has to do with the signal tower that watches over it. We can find numerous citizens of the city all glued to their television sets, so addicted to the contents on screen that they are unaware of the world around them. Even if you throw a bottle at them, they won't turn around. The TV is too captivating to look away. Turning off the TVs will stir them into a rage, attacking anything nearby. If you're lucky though, there may be another TV that will distract them instead. It doesn't matter if the TV is on the other side of certain death, their tunnel vision and utter devotion to the program compels them to seek it out. The symbolism is pretty apparent. If the world of Nowhere creates specific places for specific reasons, then this reason is escapism. Comfort media, whether they be games, music, or TV, are, as the name implies, comforting. Having a way to get away from the outside world is crucial in our current day, and this kind of thing becomes more and more important the older you get. It used to be that life was about homework and how you were viewed at school, and now it's about taxes, families, job security, and all the other pains of adult life. So it makes sense that the adults are viewed as the victims of this, as they are more likely to cling to this in times of turmoil. It's comforting to know that for just a few hours you could disappear into your favorite media, to forget about the realities of the world, even for just a little bit. That's why all the residents are completely in rapture by this transmission. It's not showing something specific on screen, but the game is trying to capture the idea of it, that any one of these people could be watching whatever they like. It's also showing the disastrous effects of this. Once those TVs are off, the residents are pissed, as you've snapped them out of their comfort zone. Their utter addiction to these TVs and this wonderland they desire compels them to seek out any source of it, no matter where it is. But in doing so, they neglect their own realities. Many of the houses we travel through are in desperate need of repair, with the wood chipping, garbage everywhere, and dishes piled up or on the floor.
TikTok
the
always
residents
after me,
themselves
bro.
have twisted, malformed
TikTok
faces,
always
showing that
after
the
me.
TVs have taken their identities. Not that they seem to mind. This has even taken a deadlier turn for some of the residents. The man we saw earlier was trying to get into the TV. There is a scene later where one of the residents, having fallen from the roof, bolts into the TV, destroying it and himself in the process. Another is seen trying to get into a room with a TV playing. He doesn't seem able to enter it, but just peering through the crack is enough for him. One's even watching it while in the bathtub, a rather dangerous affair. I think you can see this as someone wanting to be a part of the thing they seek comfort in so desperately. Both fictional and non-fictional media can create this feeling within us. Fictional, while often not attainable, like say fighting demons as a ninja, still allows you to sink into your comfort zone, letting us rid ourselves of the pains of the outside world. However, reality TV and other non-fictional media can sometimes make us feel worse about ourselves because we don't have the life we want, especially when the people in those shows seem ungrateful for the life they lead. It makes you bitter and angry, but also sad, depressed even. There's a scene later where numerous residents can be seen plunging to their deaths. Realistically, I think this is the signal tower compelling them and then taking their life essence, possibly as a means to power itself. But metaphorically, these residents are realizing that the life they have is not the one they want, and it's one they cannot escape from, so believing that there is no other option left, they take their own lives. As wonderful as the internet and the television have been in connecting us, you'll often hear that we are arguably more alone than ever, and I think this is a great example of this phenomenon. But there is a lot more going on here than just the city and its obsession with escapism, though. There is both a school and a hospital still operating within the city, although it's obviously not like you'd expect. Mono and the girl first traveled through the school. The school itself has been overtaken by porcelain dolls known as bullies, while the classroom is run by the teacher. The teacher seems to run a tight ship around here. There is a room that only contains a chair and some rope, implying that the kids were often put here, likely as some kind of solitary confinement. She managed to tie up a particularly naughty student to a rope and is now forced to draw those ever-infamous eyes across the floor. When not berating her students, though, she is conducting lessons, writing words on the board or preparing science experiments for the next class. She seems to want these kids to turn into excellent students, but doing that is going to take some effort, as she certainly isn't short on having kids to discipline. These kids aren't called bullies for nothing. Not only are they wreaking all kinds of havoc on each other, but they are often seen setting traps and ambushes, even managing to kidnap the girl while Mono is stuck under a locker. Next we see her, she's strung up to the ceiling while the kids watch and laugh from below. That being said, the students do obey her, as she will instruct them to attack Mono if he is spotted, but it's unclear if it's done out of loyalty or fear. Likely the latter. Their description on the website says that they are simply bullies. No bad childhoods or messed up parents, just bullies through and through. As mentioned earlier, the antagonists of Little Nightmares are not malicious figures with goals or motivations, but just individuals with urges or base instincts. The inclusion of the bullies and teachers seem to be an attempt to hone in on that childhood horror. The horrors of school, bullies at school, and the mean teachers you have for your classes. But there is a semblance of humanity left in her, it seems. Right at the very end, when she's away from the class and the kids, we can see her playing the piano. It's the calmest, most passionate version of her we've seen. You know, of course, until she finds Mono, but this does suggest that she isn't a completely heartless person, and that there is something in her life that brings her joy. But after Mono rescues the girl, the two will have to escape the frightening gaze of the teacher before they end up like her students. Once outside the bounds of the school, the two travel to the next area, which would be the hospital. Rain starts pouring pretty heavily though, so they seek out some shelter and end up finding a yellow raincoat for the girl to wear. Now, this is obviously a pretty important detail, but this does not mean that the girl journeying with Mono is the girl with the raincoat from the mobile game. On the contrary, it seems to be the other girl we saw who helped her defeat the Pretender. This girl's name is Six. Concept art of Six shows her in the same outfit from the mobile game, and Bandai Namco has marketed the mobile title as not only a prequel, but a game that would explore the past of Six, seemingly suggesting that Six was the girl who crushed the Pretender with the boulder, and not the girl with the raincoat, even though she now has one just like hers. The hospital is another strange location, with many of the residents here already being dead, having had their bodies replaced with porcelain limbs. They look very similar to the ones used by the Hunter, suggesting a partnership between the two. Maybe the Hunter gets supplied with limbs and such for his taxidermy, while the doctor gets new patients. According to a PlayStation blog, the patients came here looking to cure the boredom in their lives. He would then replace their fleshy body parts with porcelain ones. As the blog post further notes, it was self-improvement through medical intervention. It's unclear if this was before the signal tower and the transmission, or even during, but it seems as though even after a while, the residents needed something to cure their unending boredom. The doctor, however, seems obsessed with replacing body parts, constantly changing out old pieces with new ones, even if they don't need fixing. His unending dedication to achieving perfection has led to him remaking everything he's previously made, only to remake that sometime later. None of his patients are alive, but that doesn't seem to bother him much. He'll go from room to room checking up on his patients and making sure they get the proper care they need. He does have a particular fascination with one patient, whom he comes to their aid once their life support is shut down. Now, to be fair, this is the only patient you can actually harm in the game, so maybe he treats all his patients this way, or maybe he has a deep personal relationship with this former resident. Strangely, despite being dead, these residents seem to possess some semblance of life, if we can even call it that. A few moments during this chapter force Mono to shine a light on the patients to prevent them from surrounding him.
I will be back. I need more drink. And I'm back. I'm done eating.
Some have
This story
theorized
is
that the
fucking
body is
confusing.
acting on instinct, as the light could remind them of the light that would sit above them during
What's
an
up, Levi?
operation, which is why they stay still.
Welcome in.
Still, not unlike the ship of Theseus, if all the body has been removed, is it truly the same person? Given that most of these bodies are almost all porcelain, and most of them don't even have heads, it makes you wonder if they're truly alive,
They're
or
not.
if the only thing that remains within them is their souls. Eventually, our duo will have to come face to face with the doctor himself. They'll have to avoid him while he goes about his business, checking in on the patients and replacing parts he finds undesirable. The two are found during this and are forced to run. Towards the end, they find an incinerator. Using some quick thinking, Mono hides inside to lure the doctor in, while Six shuts the door. Mono then has the option of either letting him stay in there or roasting him alive, giving them a nice warm fire to relax next to before they leave. It's during these areas though that Mono has been slowly approaching TVs. The noise from them is so loud that he tries to turn them off. After tuning to the right frequency, he ends up getting sucked into them. Fortunately, Six is here to help him out. These TVs and the doors he keeps appearing in front of are calling to him. During one of these encounters, the main antagonist makes an appearance. The Thin Man. Both Six and Mono attempt to run away from him, but Six is caught and taken back to his lair, leaving behind those same glitched remains that we saw from the other kids earlier. Mono then has to continue through the Pale City by himself. Along the way, he finds Six trapped in a TV.
Nope.
While attempting to get her out, the Thin Man comes by to not only take her back, but bring Mono along with him. After just barely making it out alive, he is then assisted by Six's glitched remains, which many have called Dark Six, as she motions Mono towards her. After climbing out of the sewer, he sees the signal tower in the distance along with the Thin Man. Using his supernatural powers, the origins of which we aren't really sure of, he fends off and kills the Thin Man. After killing the Thin Man,
what was
Mono
that
brings
about?
himself closer to the signal tower, vowing to put an end to this transmission and save his new friend in the process. As he enters, he hears the sound of a music box and uses that to track Six through the unending maze
I
of the
hated
tower.
this fight so much.
Finally tracking down the source, he sees a monstrous version of Six now deformed and, like the residents, utterly fixated on her music box. To snap her out of the trance, Mono will have to break the music box, something that clearly angers her. After breaking it enough times, he returns Six to her original form. They have very little time for reunion, however, as the fleshy walls of the tower have come to swallow them whole. It's assumed that this flesh is the real form of the signal tower, and that the tower itself is merely a protective shell meant to hide itself from the people of the city so that it can scheme from the shadows. It's also heavily implied by the concept art for the game that the flesh is an amalgamation of the residents within the Pale City, who've been sucked into the TV by the transmission. The Thin Man seems to be a representative of this flesh, helping it feast on the victims of the city. As they are running away, Mono misses the jump, forcing Six to pull him up.
Psych. And she leaves.
It's assumed that after Six was taken to the signal tower, time had passed differently there, as I can't imagine she turned into this monstrous being overnight. It seems then that during this long time in isolation, she found comfort in the music box, just like the one she had at the beginning of the game. With Mono having destroyed that,
She's
it's
a
no different than
bitch.
turning off the residents' TVs. And, well, we know how they reacted. When a Twitter user commented on the parallels between the viewers and the TVs and that of Six and her music box, the account replied, quote, "Indeed, more of you understand the pain that Mono caused Six more than you realize," further reinforcing that Mono breaking her music box was the catalyst for her betrayal. Mono's website description says that he finds respite in the paper bag he wears, as it hides him from the outside world that hates him and wants him to fail. With that in mind, this is a rather troubling fate for Mono, as he is now without his mask, trapped in a room with eyes constantly watching over and judging him. With no way out and no hope, Mono simply sits down on his chair, forever. He presumably stays like this for a long time, although time, of course, is a rather confusing metric in this world. As the hours turn to days and days to weeks, Mono gets older and older, before eventually becoming the Thin Man. This has led many to speculate on the nature of the Thin Man. Is he just assuming the role of the Thin Man in that they all look like this? Or is the Thin Man who chases us throughout the game an older version of Mono, possibly trying to save himself from Six's betrayal? The website says that he roams this desolate city in search of something. Maybe he's searching for Mono. Could that mean that Mono is also stuck in a time loop, unable to escape his fate, continually forced to run away from the Thin Man only to become him, and then die to the next Mono, repeating the cycle? Like much of this game, it's a question without an answer.
Yep.
But as the game comes to a close, we see Six, along with her dark version, having just leapt through a TV, looking down at an advertisement for the mall. the setting of the next game. Little Nightmares 1 begins with Six already aboard the mall. It seems as though after the events of the second game, while walking through the streets of the Pale City, she was apprehended by the ferryman, who captured and placed her inside the mall. Now in her new home, she made the acquaintance of a few other kids who were hiding within its walls. They all tell stories about their history and how they got here, although Six is reluctant to share hers. One tells the story of how they and their sister were from a faraway village. They used to have these protective charms that warded off the north wind, but the charms did little to quell that wind, as it was so powerful that it destroyed their home. They fled from village to village seeking refuge, but no one would take them in, likely assuming that they were a bad omen. It seems as though this wind had chased them for miles with the intent of taking the child. The wind makes mention of a wager and his adversary, likely referring to another individual involved in this wager. This wager was likely about who could kidnap the kid first, for the other child reveals himself to be the ferryman. The kid's sister, whom he assumed he was traveling with, had been dead for some time, replaced by the ferryman. He was then granted his wish of shelter from the wind, but he was to stay here in the mall as payment. Sometime in the future, Six would come back to the hideout with a music box. Despite the happy reactions amongst the kids, one girl was particularly unnerved by her reflection, so much so that she threw the box and broke it. One child questions why she did such a thing. She then tells them her history and how she ended up in the mall. Long ago, she was with some friends exploring an abandoned house. Inside was a hall of mirrors able to distort their reflection.
And the mirrors
one made a boy tall and muscular, the other had a duplicate. Our storyteller was worried about the mirrors, and she had every right to be, for an entity known as the Mirror Man was hiding inside, ready to snatch them up and their reflection, which had now been made real. It seems as though the mirror takes the old them and traps them in the mirrors, while the new distorted version becomes reality. Hoping to turn themselves back to normal, they find these mirrors but were unsuccessful. The child that had duplicated themselves had lost their other half, meaning they could only speak in half sentences. Our storyteller devises a plan, but they aren't supposed to look at any of the mirrors. They successfully trap the Mirror Man by smashing the mirrors together, but the girl catches a glimpse of herself in the shattered mirror. This distorted her mind into bite-sized pieces, reminiscent of the shattered pieces of the mirror. Her friends decided to leave without her, vowing to come back later to save her, but they never did. And besides, the ferryman got to her first, which is how she ended up in the mall. As for the game itself, Six is never seen talking with any of these other children, as most of her journey through the mall will be alone. Like the Pale City, the mall has ample reason for existing in this world. Read from one of the game's directors, the mall exists because hunger exists. Looking at the concept art for the game, we can see that the mall is massive, and the brief amount we see on the surface is only the tip of the iceberg. The mall is run by a being known as the Lady. She keeps tabs on everything here, making sure it's all run to her specifications. Her status as the owner of the mall seems to be widespread. We saw that advertisement for it at the end of the second game, but the Lady has dozens of photos of other people, some of whom we've seen across this game and Little Nightmares 2, implying that the mall is well known amongst those of nowhere. The Lady uses the mall to lure in residents known as guests so they can gorge on their supply. And she brings in a lot of them, if the dishes are any indication. The website mentions that they are an essential part of the mall's life cycle, arriving, slumping themselves down at a table, and then eating like there is no tomorrow. They also eat pretty much anything. Most of the food they consume is meat, with most of it seemingly not even cooked. They'll even eat Six if they catch her, showing that it doesn't really matter what it is, if you put it in front of them, they will eat it. And I truly do mean in front of them, by the way, as they can do very little once they've sat down. While they are not fully incapable of movement, they are often seen crawling towards Six, barreling over each other without a second thought. This makes it easier for Six to escape, but their ravenous hunger shows that they won't give up the chase easily. The website also notes that while the guests do arrive, they will leave one way or another. Various bedrooms seem to exist throughout the mall, providing a comforting atmosphere for those who like to stay and enjoy the festivities. But it's heavily implied that the guests never actually leave the mall, but are rather killed, made into meat, only for that to be served to the next round of guests, with this continuing in a cycle. Near the guest area is the kitchen, where the twin chefs work day and night to produce the food for the hungry customers. Bags of what are assumed to be bodies are piled up next to the kitchen, and the sheer quantity of them likely reinforces that these are the guests of the mall. They also seem to stuff some of it in the cold storage room to keep it from spoiling. Much of what remains of their past life can be found in the pits. Piles and piles of shoes, along with suitcases, are all that remain of them. The Lady also seems to use her supernatural powers to keep things running, although to what end we simply don't know. The mall may have its own fleshy inside that needs to be fed, a lot like the signal tower, thus meaning that the Lady is a lot like the Thin Man, an envoy of a greater power. Six is going to have to get through all of this if she is to escape the mall alive. The prison is the first area of the game, and like Very Little Nightmares, houses all kinds of traps and prison cells, conveniently small enough to capture any child aboard the mall. But strangely, it's also got a play area, with toys and swings strewn about the place. There's even a nursery which is run by the janitor. The janitor is described as a man who once fled the world and then found the mall, but what he is fleeing from, we aren't sure. But as the janitor, he keeps track of both the ship and the kids. We can find him checking in on the kids who are currently napping. They don't seem too disturbed by the man's presence, or maybe they're just really good at hiding it, as all of them are fast asleep, unlike 6. It's unlikely that they would get very far even if they did try to escape though, as cameras are watching their every move. Some kids who may have misbehaved were then taken to these prison cell-like rooms to sit and think about their actions. Even then, some did try to escape, but the stone-like figures closely resembling children should tell you all you need to know about their fates. Those who died, whether by their own admission or by the janitors, were taken, wrapped in a cloth, and then shipped out of the area. We're unable to follow the trail of this, but it's safe to assume it's going to the kitchen. The twin chefs can cut 6 or throw her into their stew, reinforcing that children and adults alike are a part of the main course. While going through the hallways of the mall, 6 starts to get hungry. Luckily, a young boy is nearby who gives her a piece of bread. But this won't be the last time she gets hungry. In fact, her hunger seems to overtake her. When she gets hungry again later, she is so desperate for a bite to eat that she doesn't even notice the obvious trap that she's walked into. Her sentence is fortunately short-lived, as she was able to escape and continue her journey out of the mall. But she will have to cross through the janitor's domain to find the exit. This forces her into a conflict with him, ending with her shutting the doors of the elevator down on his arms, cutting them in half. Afterward, it's on to the kitchen, run by the twin chefs. There's something I wanted to mention now that we're talking about the chefs again. It seems as though both the chefs and the janitor are wearing masks. We can see the janitor's mask slipping off his face, and the chefs can be seen occasionally scratching their faces by reaching under their skin. The trading card for the chef on Steam shows this clear as day too. Back at the hospital in Little Nightmares 2, we can find various of what I assume to be masks, some of which match the design of the guests. The people of the mall, from the staff to the guests, may have gotten their masks from the doctor, possibly as a result of the signal tower deforming their faces, although this is just a theory of mine. Regardless, we can see 6's hunger getting the best of her, as now she has resorted to eating a live rat caught in a trap. Navigating her way through the kitchen rewards 6 with a one-way trip to the guest area. Here she'll navigate through the tables and stools of the guests, being careful to not become one with their food. But she too is desperate for her own slice of the pie. As she limps forward, clutching her aching stomach, a cute little gnome offers her a sausage, but she goes for the gnome instead. Throughout all these encounters, Dark 6 can be seen watching over her. Dark 6 had likely wanted 6 to come here to usurp the lady's powers, as it was the one who initially motioned her towards the advertisement of the mall. But its continued presence during these chapters seems to imply that it represents a darker, sinister side to 6. It could even explain why she is so willing to betray Mono despite all they went through, and why she went for the gnome instead of the sausage. Her empathy has disappeared. All that's left is pragmatism, wrapped inside the body of a girl who will do whatever it takes to make sure she survives, even if it comes at the cost of others. Afterward, she'll make her way through the halls before spotting the lady. She'll then follow the lady to her quarters. What's apparent about her is the distinct lack of mirrors in her quarters, or if there are any, they're all broken, something which is elaborated on a bit more in the DLC. 6 will then arrive in a very empty room filled only with mannequins that look like the lady. She will then use the only mirror left in the room as a weapon against the lady. The reason for the mirror could stem from a few reasons. As we've seen from the comics, the distorted image becomes reality, so it may be affecting her in some way. It may also have to do with the light that appears during the boss fight. Otto from Sounds of Nightmares is stricken by a brief flash of light that is incredibly blinding, much like this. As such, if we go with the theory that the mall, like the signal tower, is a fleshy entity hiding its true form somewhere below deck, that could mean that the mall was helping 6 that she could defeat the lady and possibly become the new lady. This may even be where her name comes from. There are pictures within her quarters that show other ladies, implying that this one might be the 5th, with 6 being the 6th lady. But 6 clearly has better plans. After defeating the lady, her hunger returns. Seeing only one option, she bites the neck of the lady, killing her and usurping her power. Instead of becoming the new lady though, 6 walks through the dining hall that leads to the outside. All the guests still around attempt to feast on her but are quickly killed. She then opens the front door and ascends the steps of the mall while a group of gnomes look on. What power has just been released upon this world? Does 6 plan to destroy all of nowhere, or is she simply looking out for herself again? We don't know. But what we do know is that the mall no longer has a lady, so it's fair to assume its existence, like the lady herself, will cease, doomed to float to the bottom of the ocean. Before we move on to the next game, I'd like to talk about the first game's DLC, Secrets of the Maw. This has us playing as a new kid, known as the Runaway Kid,
What up, Blue?
as we see their journey through the Maw. Their journey takes place during the events of the main game, as we can find Six captured by the janitor right next to the cage of our protagonist. Our new protagonist finds himself waking from a nightmare. We learn that he was one of the many kids seen sleeping back in the nursery. As he also tries to escape, we can see him following in the footsteps of another child before falling into some water. This sewer area is looked after by the Granny. The Granny has been a continued mystery for some time. Her origin and purpose here in the depths are still unknown to this day. It's possible that this Granny was a previous inhabitant of the Maw, possibly the previous lady who had her power usurped by this current lady. It's also just as likely that she has no relation to the lady at all, and is simply a haunting force that lurks beneath the depths of the Maw. The lady does have a picture of her in her quarters, though, suggesting some kind of relationship. But the Granny will become a constant threat throughout this chapter, so we'll have to avoid her at all costs. By the end, he manages to knock a TV into the water, electrocuting her, giving him safe passage through the rest of the depths. But as he climbs up a ladder, he is taken by the janitor. The next chapter starts with the runaway kid in a cage right next to Six, around the time she was captured too. While she will break out and continue her journey, the kid was the one who was taken by the janitor at the beginning of that chapter. He is then put into one of the many cloth bags we saw earlier. He makes his way out, but the cloth rips, and he falls a few floors down. Down here is also a woodworking room that the janitor seems to use to make dolls, likely for the kids upstairs. The kid will then have to work with the gnomes to get a conveyor running, so that he could take it to the top of the Maw. To do this, he will have to rescue them, and then put them to work. Modern child labor laws don't really exist in the Maw, so I'm sure this is legal. As he goes past the fire they made, he climbs atop an elevator, only for it to be the one that the lady is riding in. The kid then sneaks through the lady's chambers. Within it, he will find a hidden room with a single urn. Breaking this reveals what appears to be ashes based on the achievement name. It's unclear who they belong to, but given the brief photo of the lady with a young child, one who is not seen throughout the games, this could be her daughter. As the kid attempts to escape her quarters, he makes the mistake of finding her when she's most vulnerable. Having seen her disfigured face, she storms off in a rage. Interestingly, it seems as though her face is actually normal. The community has done great work digging into this game over the years, and after extracting the model of the ladies from the game, it was learned that she actually looks normal, not at all like the disfigured reflection would have you believe. If the comics are anything to go off of, the reflection is a representation of herself, and that maybe before long, like the kids, her face will turn into that disfigured look soon enough. It suggests that she struggles with her appearance, always trying to look her best. It's kind of a microcosm of her entire personality. She seems to want everything. She wants to keep the Maw intact, wants to be at the top using her power, wants to be youthful, etc. She's clearly known across the land of nowhere, as we can see pictures of her in small statues everywhere, and maybe this kind of absolute power got to her head. It's during this time, though, that the runaway kid will face off against some shadow children. These seem to be like the Maw's version of the glitched domains we saw in the Pale City, this time likely done by the lady. But our protagonist will have a different fate in store for him, for when captured by the lady, he's turned into a gnome. As a gnome, he wanders around the guest area, passing those other guests who are too busy eating to notice him. But as the game comes to a close, we can see a familiar sight, a small room with a gnome and a sausage, giving us the real identity of the gnome from earlier, as soon, Six will come, ready to eat, and it won't be the sausage that she'll be tasting.
Yep.
This then brings us to the events of the newly released Little Nightmares 3. As you've likely guessed by now, the order of the games in this video has been in timeline order, not release order. I place Little Nightmares 3 here at the end though, simply because we don't know where it fits in the timeline.
What up, Cosmic?
Previous characters or events are not referenced, so it's unclear when this actually happens. As such, for the time being, it's best to think of just this game as its own thing. The game once again has a new protagonist, two this time. A young girl in a green jumpsuit named Alone, and a boy with a bird mask named Low. Low and Alone have been friends ever since they met each other in Nowhere, but while Alone has fixated on exploring the land and uncovering its mysteries, Low wants out. He's been here long enough that his only goal is to leave this place with his friend and go home. Where they first appear is in the city of Necropolis. This is a large city on the outskirts of the world, it seems, surrounded by an extremely large wall. It seemed to be a rather bustling place, as there were many different houses and buildings. Now, Necropolis is actually a Greek word, known as the City of the Dead, so it's likely that the name for this city came posthumously. But as usual, all the original denizens are gone. Instead of being subjected to their TVs, the denizens of this city were turned to stone. A large being known as the Monster Baby is seen prowling the streets, with an eye similar to that of the other eyes we've seen across the series. Running into its view will turn you to stone, so it's fair to assume this Monster Baby had a hand in the destruction of this place. The bodies themselves seem to tell a tale all on their own. Some seem scared by the sound of the Monster Baby, covering their ears in response. Others can be seen at home, waiting, almost like they knew that the end of the world was coming and were ready to accept it. Another can be spotted running around a corner, almost like they were trying to escape the watchful gaze of the baby, but failed. So it seems like this was not something the townsfolk had wanted. There is a small room that has some markings on the wall. They're a little hard to make out, but it seems like they were trying to redirect light of some kind, possibly the Monster Baby's light. They would have done so using what appears to be a mirror, although what this was meant to accomplish, I'm not sure. Later, there's a group of dwellers watching something, while one in the middle draws an eye and stands in the middle of it, almost like a summoning or a prayer. So maybe the powers that be of this place were summoned here, or maybe possessed the people in some way, much like the Pale City. But of course, for the supposed perpetrator, its motivations and purpose in this land are unknown. The one thing I would like to note is this tower in the distance. Initially I thought this was the spiral, but the game seems to imply that we are in the spiral. If so, this could be the core, or maybe a marking of its presence in the land. Lo and Alone then traverse through this necropolis, trying to avoid the Monster Baby. After narrowly escaping death, they make it to a mirror. After hopping in, they're taken to the next location, the Candy Factory. Like previous games, some of the locations have connections to one another. The Candy Factory seems intrinsically linked to the location afterwards called the Carnival. Here at the Candy Factory, we can find adults hooked up and dragged on a conveyor belt. While it initially seems like they are dead, we can see some brief movement from them, and later we'll see what they were actually on, which is just a swing. These adults work day and night to produce candy. Like the maw, the substance that makes up this candy is likely meat. We can find some fleshy substance being poured into a machine, which is then poured into the mold of the lollipops. A pit of bags is nearby with flies surrounding it, suggesting that this is some kind of spoiled food, possibly human remains. The same building also has a freezer with some of the meat sticking out. This pink fluid that the contents are turned into is seen all across the facility, suggesting that it's not a very clean place. Bugs have also taken to consuming this fluid and will kill you if not careful. All of this seems to be run by the supervisor, and she's got lots to deal with. It is a rather large facility after all. Although most of her time seems to be focused on filing papers and keeping things in order, there is a whole room filled to the brim with paperwork, the symbol of corporate life. This seems to cause her immense stress, as there isn't a single time where she isn't working the books to keep this place running. Her true form seems to be that of a spider, as she detaches her body at one point and crawls on her 6 legs. We can find a dressing room later with a dress that looks like hers, as well as a wireframe design near it, suggesting that this is how she makes her dress. This could further suggest that the supervisor does this so that she can appear human, per se, to those that she meets. That said, she won't be worrying about corporate life anytime soon, as the duo ends up pressing her to death using one of their machines. Maybe she'll be a part of the very thing that she helped create, if this stuff truly is made with other people. But where is all this candy going? Well, it's possible that it's being shipped anywhere it needs to go. A storage room has various designs on the boxes, so their candy is likely being packaged and shipped across nowhere. There are also hot air balloons attached to the buildings, likely serving as delivery trucks, taking the packages to and from the facility. But one of the facility's main clients is most definitely the Carnival. A floating paradise in the sky, the Carnival can only be accessed by hot air balloon. Inside are various games, rides, and lots of candy, all of which completely hold the guests' attention. They are so distracted by the booths and other games that you can walk right past them without issue. The booths are also run by puppets that, much like the bullies, are porcelain in nature. When talking with one of the producers behind the game, she said that these new residents called the Herd represent the dull monotony of life. She specifically mentions that you can find them both here at the Carnival and at the Candy Factory. This implies that these very same workers came here for entertainment. The Xbox website describes them as such, quote, "These thundering fellows are the puppets' focus. The Herd trundles endlessly through the Carnival, plodding from stall to stall in search of distraction and entertainment, while chowing down on candy and stale popcorn. They may even become the entertainment from time to time, as the puppets don't care too much about the well-being of their customers, only that they are kept busy. When someone goes missing, few would care to notice." So it's clear that the Herd comes here to take a break from the monotony of work. It's rather telling that their jobs are factory workers, as it's a consistently boring job. We can see that all this one worker does is just flip a lever. Not exactly an engaging job. So the Carnival then acts as a way for them to escape their work and let them be kids again. But of course it's just smoke and mirrors. Guests can be seen beating other guests like a piñata, likely unaware of what they're actually doing. Later, we'll then find a storage room filled with bodies, along with an advertisement for the candy factory. There are also some jars of eyeballs and teeth, as well as various rooms with either dead guests or piles of meat stuffed into crates. We can even find a large pit of teeth under the carnival. I thought these were at first novelty teeth, the kind of toys that you can wind up and such, and while that still may be the case, maybe the teeth themselves are from the guests. So the carnival and the candy factory seem to be in some kind of cyclical cycle, where the candy is produced to entice the guests who come to the carnival, only for those same guests to be killed and turned into candy, much like the moth. But those of the carnival seem too preoccupied to care, as the bright lights and pretty colors are just too enticing. To get there though, Low and Alone will have to take yet another mirror, although this time Alone almost didn't make it, taking much longer to go through the portal and not waking up immediately. They seem to have ended up in some kind of storage area. Inside this place is a strangely stuffed head used as a trophy, which looks exactly like the being found in the hunter's home. This at the very least could mean that the hunter has come to the carnival before. He may even get his supplies here too. Speaking of old friends, we can find some masks as prizes in the carnival, meaning the doctor may have had a hand in this, and is likely where the carnival got this supply. Continuing further, the duo then climbs up to the top, further reaching the actual carnival, although the guests have arrived and are ready to partake in the festivities. They eventually find a mirror that should take them out of here, but it's broken, unable to teleport them. Low, looking at his map, seems defeated, likely worrying if he will ever get home. Alone takes the map for herself, reassuring him that it will be okay. It's here in the back of the carnival where they finally meet with the Kin and his live puppet known as Mini-Kin. We can see Kin butchering a guest, using his insides as food for his puppet. There is also a bit of flesh next to a saw blade, further reinforcing the purpose of this room. As you'd expect, the two are found and need to run away, but as they take an elevator, the only things waiting for them is the Kin and his right-hand man. Alone and Low are both captured, but Alone manages to sneak out. Low causes a distraction, giving Alone enough time to rescue him. They don't seem to be the only ones who have been captured though. Nearby are some cages with some other kids in them, and another is seen performing for the Kin. So he seems more interested in having them be a part of his play, rather than feast on them. Although I suspect poor performance comes with some dire consequences, as he's certainly not afraid to kill a gnome and give it to his puppet. After fleeing from the Kin once more, they take a hot air balloon and fly out of the carnival. Unsure where it will take them, the universe has other plans, as lightning strikes, forcing them to crash land next to the Institute. The Institute is one of the more mysterious locations in this game, because there is a lot that could be going on here. As the name implies, it looks like a psychiatric institute. The main boss and possibly the leader of this establishment is this man. I don't believe he has an official name just yet, but I've seen the name Hypnotist thrown around recently. It's in this building that we could find Low's room. During certain points in the story, we can see flashbacks to Low in a locked room. We find that very same room later, and within it are not only all his drawings, but a doll of Alone. We will talk about the implications of that later, but this institute and possibly the hypnotist have been mentioned before. I'll detail these events more in the Sounds of Nightmares section, but that story deals with a girl named Noon meeting with a counselor named Otto. Noon is having nightmares, being briefly transported to nowhere before coming back a few minutes later. Otto is trying to find the nowhere because his sister Cece disappeared one day and he assumes that she was taken there by the ferryman. The Institute has also been known to be a hotspot for disappearances, as many kids have gone in, but none have left. It's not confirmed, of course, but Otto could be this hypnotist. This place, being a center of disappearances, could even explain its appearance here and nowhere. It may also even explain the other version that we come across. Picking up the doll of Alone allows you to see another version of the Institute. The achievement tied to this is called Second Sight. This Second Sight seems to likely show us a past version of the Institute before the vines and flora took it over, but could even be showing us a look at the real Institute. There is also a lot of other nods to that series, but I need to save that for later as we need the full context of it before I could start talking about it, so we'll circle back to this later. Regardless, the Institute here in Nowhere is rather deserted. The staff seems to be around, but they aren't too focused on any inpatients, mainly because there aren't any to begin with. While the hypnotist is busy snaking around the building with his long limbs. There are quite a few drawings that match those seen in Necropolis, such as this ever-present spiral. Connecting to the hypnotist, maybe there is some kind of connection between the spiral and the Institute, or that hypnotism as a practice could be influenced by the spiral. The two then come across Low's old room and find his doll of Alone. Using the Second Sight ability, they can traverse previously destroyed parts of the Institute. As the two continue forward, they open a door, hold hands, and brace for what's to come. As they walk into what appears to be another room for patient sessions, the hypnotist arrives and chases them through the halls. At the end is another mirror. Low is ready to hop in, but Alone isn't, likely worried about what happened last time. Her hesitancy gives the hypnotist enough time to break in and knock over the mirror. The two then have to narrowly avoid both his attacks and any debris that falls as a result, while making sure to hit a gong in between attempts. As he falls to the bottom of the facility, so too does Low and Alone. Alone does manage to save Low, but she is barely able to keep him from falling. Despite obvious flashbacks and parallels, no betrayals will happen this time, as they both fall to the bottom. While knocked out, we get another cutscene of Low back in his cell. We see Alone as a doll on his bed before Alone herself comes by to draw with him. Back to the present, wounded, they both pick each other up and go through the mirror that survived the fall. Both of them go through the mirror, but Alone is shot back out.
Gone.
We see that the map they carried was nothing more than a drawing, a reminder of their ultimate goal, but Alone won't be going with him, for it's very likely that Alone never existed. That previous cutscene seems to imply that Alone was always a doll, and that Alone in-game was nothing more than Low's imagination, an imaginary friend he dreamed up to help him cope. Now, the spiritual powers of Nowhere are still a mystery, so it's not entirely clear if this was a very vivid hallucination, or that the Alone we did play as in-game did exist, but because she was conjured up in Low's mind, she can only exist within the bounds of Nowhere, which would explain why she dies, as Low is presumably no longer in Nowhere. The post-credit cutscene seems to suggest this is the case, as Low seems to be in a home in the real world, but now without the magical mirror. He got his wish, but it came at a cost. Still, the journey may not be over for Low or Alone. The DLC Secrets of the Spiral will star Low. If it's a prequel, that would make the most sense, but it could be set after the events of the main game, where Low will journey back to Nowhere to get Alone back, although details on the DLC's contents remain a mystery for now. Still, there are many questions left to answer, such as the nature of the second site, the future of Low, and most importantly, the Spiral itself. But with the DLC set to release in a few months, here's hoping those questions become answers.
There's just going to be more questions.
Before we head out for the day, I want to spend some time talking about the other media that make up Little Nightmares.
It's just going to be more questions.
Multimedia, filled with comics,
it's just going to be more
and
questions.
Fictional series. This content,
they have no story for this game,
can help us give another perspective on this world we know so little about. That said, much of this content is still a work in progress.
Yeah,
the audio series Sounds of Nightmares has completed its first season, but has been renewed for another. A new comic, Descent into Nowhere, was just released a few days ago, but only the first issue, as the other issues will be released on a monthly basis. And then there is the stop-motion film and VR title Altered Echoes, which are currently under production with no release date as of yet. While I initially wanted to wait for all this to release, I suspect that by the time it's out, there will likely be more content over the horizon.
This is how she gets
So for now, I plan to cover everything we have available to us as of the making of this video. Then next year, when the DLCs for Little Nightmares 3 are released, I plan to make an updated version of this video. It will have everything we talked about today, on top of everything released in between then, so that we can stay fully up to date once more. So with that said, let's talk about the other stuff related to Little Nightmares that aren't games.
Okay.
Released in 2023, the Sounds of Nightmare audio series details the journey of a girl named Noon, who is committed to the County Psychiatric Institute due to her chronic nightmares that seem to be getting worse each night. Noon seems rather special. She was afflicted with what's called water sickness, a rare disease that seemingly didn't have a cure. However, a special doctor had cured her, and the case was so widespread that she garnered some fame from it, as the girl who was cured. Things started to change for her after that. She was told what to do by many people due to her fame, and the kids at school who bullied her now treated her like royalty. It seems as though this sickness was not uncommon despite being previously incurable, as cures went to people all over the counties, which, as we stated, is a real place in the real world. Noon claims, however, that she wasn't cured at all, and that she could still feel something inside her body moving around. She's also had some terrible nightmares as of late, so she was admitted to the institute to have her condition looked over. The counselor overseeing her is Otto. Otto first starts by having Noon recount her dream. Despite how dreams normally work, where they often disappear come morning, she can remember it with vivid detail, even able to recount the smell of certain things. During the retelling of her dream, she mentions beings whose descriptions match the ferrymen and shadow children. From here on, every chapter is going to be centered around Noon retelling a dream while Otto listens in. These dreams seem to be moments where Noon is actually going to nowhere, but then comes back after the dream is done. Otto, in between sessions, sometimes notice her disappear.
I'm still confused, but I got a little